GitHub Copilot just made major changes to its pricing. You've probably heard some things online about it, but is it that big of a deal, or is it a bunch of hype? I see a lot of numbers being thrown around, but it's hard to gauge what usage results in what pricing. So let's do a test. I have not used Copilot at all this month. I'm going to show you my usage dashboard at the beginning of the session, then I'm going to have the AI do some work, then I'll show you my usage at the end. That way you can see for yourself what these costs might look like without having to spend your own money to test it. Now, obviously, your mileage will vary, but you'll get a good gauge as to this is how much work it did, and this is what roughly the pricing was for this model, etc. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Tim Corey, and it's my goal to help you become a great developer, whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned developer. I create training courses at iamtimcorey.com to help developers reach their full potential. But not everyone can afford to pay for training, which is why that paid content funds the free content that I do here on YouTube. So let's do some free content. So here I have a project that's already started. It's just a file new project. The only thing I did was that I used the Aspire, and my tooling is Aspire 13.1, but I installed the command line to 13.4 and then upgrade the project. So it's 13.4 Aspire. And if we run this, it's just a basic Blazor web application. So there's the Aspire project. If we launch the Blazor project, it's a hello world project. That's all there is to it. It's really simple, not that much to it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to GitHub and GitHub Copilot and ask for it to do some work. Now, before I do that, let's come over here. This is my dashboard for my company, which is just me and my son, actually, as far as GitHub Copilot licenses go. But no usage found. Okay, from June 1st to June 30th of 2026, if we hit refresh on this just to prove that, there's nothing, no smoke and mirrors or anything like that, I've used 0 credits. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, and that also means I haven't tested this. This is right off the bat. I usually test what I do beforehand, but you can't really test using credits, especially since it might burn through my credits. So what we're going to do is we're going to use GitHub Copilot, which has just changed pricing as of June 1st. And we're going to use an agent mode I've chosen Claude Sonnet 4.6. The larger font makes it kind of cuts off these things. So you can't really see until you hover over, like that's Opus 4.5. But if you notice that Sonnet 4.6 is a medium cost, which I don't love this. They used to have multipliers and they took that away. And I think that's really to hide the costs because, there's not a firm, what is low, what is medium, what is high. It's in relation to each other, but you can't really tell, is Sonnet 4.6 the same as Sonnet 4.5? They both say medium, but does that mean they're the same cost? Probably not. And are these costs the same today as they are tomorrow? You don't really know. Those things can change. I don't love that. In fact, I absolutely hate that. But we're going to choose a medium model. I do know that when they had the multipliers, and they were announcing what the multipliers would be for June 1st, they said that Opus 4.7 was a 27x multiplier, whereas GPT 5.5 was I think it was a 50 something X multiplier. So it's much, much higher. But yet they're both say high cost and 3 out of 4 bubbles, which is interesting. There's no 4 bubbles one here. So I don't think Opus 4.7 and GPT 5.5 are the same cost, even though they say they're both high cost, which again, just obscures what these costs actually are, which is frustrating. But what we're going to choose is a medium cost model, Claude Sonnet 4.6. Okay, so we're going to not bring in, if we go look at our tools. So we do have 2 out of 64 tools, Azure best practices, and you know what? Let's get rid of Azure entirely. Let's just turn off Azure MCP. We do have GitHub Copilot MCP. We have Learn MCP and NuGet MCP and Planning MCP. So all those are turned on. Otherwise, we don't have any skills. We just have the basics. So what that means is we're not bringing a whole bunch of extra markdown files that are hidden in the background somewhere that tell my AI how to do things. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. That can be really valuable, but what it does do as well is it brings in more token usage. So I'm going to try and keep my token usage up front and in front of you as much as possible, so you can see every token being used and how it's used. So that's why I'm not bringing in skills, etc. So let's talk about the prompt. I've already written the prompt out, so you don't have to watch me craft the prompt. And I'm not saying the prompt is the best prompt in the world. I'm just saying this is the prompt we're going to use. Okay. Again, this is not about writing the best application. I don't really like vibe coding. And this is going to be vibe coding to see a vibe coding test first. Now, depending on the cost, you may go for smaller things. If it costs an incredible amount of money to do this, well, they can come back and do smaller things to see if that will be cheaper and what that might cost. But for this, we're going to have it build a very small application. So this is the application. I want you to turn this solution into a personal lending library web app. Now it's going to track all my books, movies, games, and other items, and who I've lent them to, if anyone. Want to see a simple app. It should track items I own by name, short description, and location where I store it, as well as the borrowing history. Each borrower should just be a first and last name, phone number, and email address. If an item is currently borrowed, it should list the date borrowed, as well as who borrowed it. This is why you should always check your prompts, right? For technology, please use the latest .NET 10 features in this Blazor web app. Most pages that need to access data will probably need to be server pages rather than WebAssembly. Use SQLite to store the data. I do not currently have a database. Use Dapper for data access. I'm trying to be clear about what I want without going too overboard on this, but I do want to say, hey, here's how I want you to do things. One thing I want to add, do not add any authentication. So we're keeping this simple. We're not going crazy. We're keeping this really simple and focused. For the UI, use custom CSS rather than rely on a CSS library like Bootstrap or Tailwind. Did you know you can do that? You can actually just write CSS and it just works. Nothing wrong against Tailwind or Bootstrap. They're great libraries and I use them a lot. But just so you know, you can use just straight up CSS. Try to keep it simple and clean, but use a modern look. So I'm letting the AI have a lot of liberty here. I'm not bringing in the examples that I would for a normal app. I'm just being really simple. Now, I expect to have a page for viewing all my assets with the ability to filter based upon the type, as well as a way for that page from that page to select an item to check it out or check it in. There should be a way to edit assets and borrowers as well to add and delete both. There should be a way to get more details on an asset, including the borrowing history of the item. The end result should be an app that keeps track of my items and who has borrowed them. So this is my kind of sandwich method of writing prompts. Again, this is much simpler than I do for my prompts if I'm even going to do a fraction of what I'm doing here, but I'm trying to keep it simple. But what I like to do is at the very beginning, I like to state the overall goal of this work. And at the very end, I like to re-summarize that same goal. That way you're giving the AI the best chance of understanding this is the big picture goal. And then inside I put as many details as possible with specifics about what I want this app to do, right? So specifics on how it's going to work and what it should and shouldn't do. Okay, so that's the prompt. I'm going to copy this prompt. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to paste that into Copilot, not bringing in anything else. Okay, there's the prompt. There's Copilot. We're in agent mode. Let's go ahead and hit send. So it's going to do its work. I may have to pause this video because I don't want you to just sit here and watch this forever. It shouldn't take too long to build because it's a small thing. But at the same time, I'm not going to do anything tricky with my pausing and go out and do other work or something like that to inflate these numbers. I want this to be a true test of what it costs and what we get out of that cost. Okay, so again, I'll pause the video because you don't need to watch me just let it do its thing. It may ask me a prompt to go out to look for things or to run the application, etc. So you don't have to watch all of that, but know it's happening. Yeah, here's the confirmation. Get latest package version for SQLite. So confirm. So we'll let that start working. Okay, I'm going to pause the video. I'll come back to it once this is done. Okay, that took a few minutes to run to build all of this. Let's just first pass, let's just build it, see if it runs, and then we'll look at the code that it wrote and the costs associated. So here's my library. It looks terrible, but it's something, right? My items and borrowers. So my items here, let's just add an item. Lord of the Rings, sure. We have types of book, movie, game, and other. That's all I gave it. So, yep. This is the full series, I guess, since I haven't specified the Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, or Return of the King. This is storage location is my office. We're just going to see if this works. Hey, looks like it's available. Let's go to borrowers here, add a borrower. We'll say Tim, Corey, my fill in the blank here really wants to work. 555-555-1212. Email address, let's just put test@test.com and add the borrower. Okay, so now we've got items, and I can say check out, choose a borrower, Tim, confirm checkout, borrow by Tim since June 2nd. Since it's actually rolled over since midnight, so it's June 2nd. And we got a book. It's still out. Borrowed by Tim Corey. Cool. So there we go. So there's the, it's not the worst in the world, but my goodness, it's got a lot of work to do. This is a great demo. This is nothing else. This is a great demo, but I wouldn't go any further than that. Let's just see what's behind the scenes here. So you can close out the plan view. I mean, it's cool. I like the idea that it has steps and it shows progress bar and all the rest, key files, etc. Let's go look at, we're just going to say accept all changes because there's no reason to not, it's just, again, a demo. I would not do this in production for a real app. But let's look at the models. We have asset, ID, name, description, location, asset type. Notice it's a string. It's not a drop down or something else. It's actually a string, it's an interesting choice. I might have gone with an integer there that had a enum backing it up. UTC now, which I do like that. So you could put local now or just, datetime.now, but what that would do is it would mess up if you move time zones, right? So if you were on the West Coast and you borrowed a book and then you returned it when you flew back to the East Coast, well, that would just mess things up. So UTC now, I love that. Populated by queries when needed. Loan record, current loan. Okay. I don't see where this is tied to loan record. Must be asset ID. There we go. Okay. And borrower ID, date borrowed, returned. Populated by joins. Interesting. Borrower and asset, and is active. Date return is null. So then we have borrower, full name. Okay. And then email, phone number, last name, first name, ID. So far, I'm liking this. I'm not loving it. I would definitely change this code. Okay. This is where I really like use SSDT in full SQL, not SQLite, because I hate to have SQL in my database or in my code. I like to have it in my database where a DBA can work on it, right next to where they can see the performance for different queries. But it is what it is. I'm not going to gripe too much about that because it is SQLite and that's different. But get connection string, default connection, or and then it has the connection string being data source equals personal library.db. Okay, I guess. It's okay. Borrower, we have our connection string building again. We have the different queries. And we have our database initializer. So that's what's going to build out the database initially. Cool. We don't have anything in client. But we have, let's close down the models and repositories and data. Look at components. We have pages. We have assets. So there's asset details. And then we have asset edit, asset list. Gotta love the Unicode support right in Visual Studio. So you can put icons right in line. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's not the worst in the world, but again, this is great for demo code. I would spend a lot more time working on this before I'd sign off on it. Let's just take a quick peek. I'm just curious about the app.css. Okay, so we have a font size of 15 pixels. That's an interesting choice. 15 is not usually a common number because of the divisibility. And then for H1, 2, and 3, you've got a margin. See, this is where you're not basing it off of EM units or REM units. Here you are, but here you're not. Interesting. I don't love it. Then we have box shadows and buttons and all the rest. This is 345 lines of CSS with a lot of pixel sizes instead of relative sizes. It depends, but I'm not thinking it's going to be the best, most flexible system in the world. I much prefer to see something that can change everything relative, because if you scale your window, if you say, hey, I want to zoom in and have my HTML at 200% because I have a harder time seeing it 100%, well, then not everything scales the same because you're using a lot of fixed sizes as opposed to, well, that's going to be a fixed size, but a lot of fixed sizes here as opposed to relative sizes, which would then scale with your font size and all the rest. So don't love that, but again, it's not a critique of writing code. It's more a matter of, did it do something that works? And that's the thing that AI does really well, is it gets something that works, not something that's right, but something that works. And so this does seem to work. So the big question is, what did it cost? I'm not sure how long the costs take before they get to Copilot. So that's the thing that context usage in current thread. So system 23%, function calls 14%, tool definition, system prompt, message, user context, and it shows us what all the usage was. So it didn't use more than about a quarter of the whole context, right? So 23% overall the context size. So that's not bad. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not a terrible amount. Let's come here and actually we're going to refresh this and make sure that right now it says that I've used $1.10. So it says that call was $1.10 of total usage, which is not a lot, but it was one call. It lasted 10 minutes of work. So if we think about doing work in a day, well, now you're going to be burning, 10, 15, 20, dollars before lunch. I would estimate that, based upon this usage, that'd be somewhere around the $100 in a day usage, conservatively. And that's using a Sonnet 4.6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that sit for a minute. And I'm going to pause the video right here. I'm going to come back to this in the next, this is late night for me, so I'm going to come back in the morning and just make sure that nothing has changed as far as the costs. Sometimes things lag behind. I'll make sure nothing lags behind. And then what we'll do is we'll do a little more work on this to do some tweaking, right? So we will look at this and say, hey, let's make this UI more functional. I think one of the things that I'm going to be working on is we go here and we look at, oops, there we go. If we hit F12 and let's size this down to, mobile size, that's no good, right? It's not mobile compliant. Here's a quick way to determine if we are updating our credits in real time. I'm going to keep the same context. So let's close this out and let's come back over here to GitHub Copilot and say, this site is not mobile friendly. It is also, it also does not have good spacing, especially around the menu. Finally, you don't use relative sizing that much in the CSS file. Please rectify these issues. Okay. So again, 4.6, same agent. Context is already loaded, so that's going to save us some money, but we're going to have it do some more work. Again, I'll probably pause this as it works. But one of the things to realize too, and I'll probably bring up another application, existing application to work with as well, is that when you're working on these demos, things look great. Like this is built out an application, 10 minutes, and it works and it puts all the stuff in the right place. Yes, it's very much a demo app. But if you're working in a real application, you don't start from scratch. You don't start from a blank canvas. You start from tens, hundreds, or even millions of hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of lines of code. And then you say, hey, I want to make a modification. There's a lot of work that goes into understanding that code base, understanding how to fit into that. There's a lot more work that goes on that should go on with your AI and its search and understanding of how you do things, what is already existing that can be reused, etc. There's a lot more context that goes into that. But for a blank canvas, there's no context. The context is just, oh, you're in a Blazor web app. That's basically it. So when you're working on a greenfield application, meaning from scratch, it's a whole lot easier. And that's why almost all demos start from greenfield. And the ones that don't tend to be a smaller app or very focused change or something else like that can be very, very tiny. Whereas in the real world, you're dealing with, if I change this one line, it affects these 50 different things, and I have to, make sure I account for those things, because the reality is it shouldn't, but, we don't ever write code perfect. And so there's more coupling than there should be, et cetera. So that takes up a lot more context window. That takes up a lot more going back and forth with the AI because it doesn't get things right, or it doesn't put things in the right format or the right way of writing things. And so, this has no context to deal with. It has no preconceived notions about how we do things. That's going to change the pricing. This is going to be cheaper than the real world. Okay, so it's taking a bit of time to chunk through this. So let's go ahead and pause the video. I'll come right back to it when it's done. Okay, it says it's done. We'll do a quick look at a couple of these things. Let's look at this app.css. All right, so it said font size of 16 pixels. I like that. That's interesting that we're going to that kind of a RAM. I hate that. Don't do this. Just don't do that. Okay, font size, we're clamping our sizes. That's good. Margin bottom, gap. I like these. I hate this. You shouldn't have weird sizes like that. It's making CSS do too much work. But what we're going to do, we're going to put in YOLO mode and just say, you know what? We're going to trust you to do this even though it's writing bad code. Because the point is just to make it do a little bit more work. And again, we're going to let this bake overnight and come back to it. Come on. There we go. But now it still looks terrible. It still looks terrible. So if I were to open up F12. By the way, F12 developer tools, if you click this little button right here, it puts it into device emulation. And what I like to do is I like to have it almost always in device emulation and then responsive. So instead of saying, oh, I want iPhone 12 Pro, forget that. Just do responsive. That way you can say, hey, what does it look like in these different sizes? Now, don't go crazy. Like almost no phone is at 262 pixels. I think for my website, I try and do 300 pixels. Is around where we try to hit for minimum size. It's still ridiculously tiny, but here it looks like 480 is like the bottom end of what I can handle for most things. Like you get a scroll bar at 479. So yeah, 480. Okay, so well, that's interesting. The hamburger menu is not open. Cool. So you have a hamburger menu, and that's terrible. That's a terrible layout. Sorry, I'm not trying to critique, but this is horrible. This is something I would yell at somebody for. You gotta stack differently. You gotta do 2 lines. You gotta do something differently here because this is not viable for showing multiple things, and it's not viable for what you're trying to accomplish. It's just not. So personally, I'd probably do is drop type and location either down below. I'd probably drop them down below. And I'd maybe change this to be one of 3 icons, well, 2 icons, either checked out or in stock icons. And then, click for more details, something like that, and you have a second line. Because you need room for the name and you need room for these buttons. And these buttons can also be dropped down below or in the more details, etc. But I kind of like to have them here. So again, terrible. Drop down menu does not work. So yeah, AI has not solved software development for sure. But hey, it's Sonnet 4.6. Maybe it's maybe GPT 5.5 will fix it. Laughing, no, it won't. But let's come back over here and hit refresh this just to see if it has updated. It has. We're now at $1.61. So I haven't gotten great output yet, but I've got $1.61 of usage. So it is updating as we go. I'll do a few more things just to see what else might do it. So what I'll do is I will put a prompt in and then I'll just pause the video, wait for it to be done, put another prompt in, pause the video, rather than making you watch as I start and kind of talk through a few things, okay? So let's do this. Let's start with the hamburger menu does not actually work. Okay, I'll have you come right back when it's done. Okay, that didn't take long. Essentially, it said, hey, the hamburger menu is on a static page, therefore we can't use C# for that, therefore we have to use a little bit of JavaScript, and lo and behold, we got it to work. All right, so now we have that working. Next up I'm going to do is we're going to address how this looks. This looks terrible. I'm going to give the AI one more shot to make this look better. So the page, especially the navigation bar, looks terrible. Please update it to a modern look. This is very, very vague advice. And let's spell especially right. And I'm also pointing it to the navigation bar. Here's a little tip. When you point out something like this, what's going to happen is it's going to focus on the navigation bar and not handle the rest of the page probably. How you word your prompts is very important because what's going to happen is it's going to focus on something that I said and instead of looking at the whole thing. So be careful to how you do things. When you emphasize something, you got to also emphasize the rest. So be right back. All right, this is the end result. This is just terrible. Like white on white. Nothing seems to have changed. It's mostly this sidebar has just been butchered more. What really kills me about all of this, if we close out, is if we look here, actually it lists up here, scroll up, we've got removed 133 lines in app.css, added 158. That's just insane changes. Remove 60 lines in main layout.razor and add 153. Insane. Like, this is just, don't do this. This is bad changes. But the end result is also something horrible. We're going to keep it because we're going to just keep moving forward with this. But this is terrible. Now let's come over to our usage graph and we'll just hit refresh, make sure you have the latest numbers. And we're now at $2.39. Not a lot, but we haven't gotten good output yet. We haven't really pushed it. We're still on Sonnet 4.6, which is the cheaper model. It's a mid-level model. And we're doing greenfield stuff. So let's do this. Let's give it a picture. So I've pulled up here this one. I'm going to use this image as an example for what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be this. I don't actually love this that much, but it's something that's, pretty common and standard. So I've already copied the clipboard. So let's say, no, I want the site to look more like this picture. And I'm going to paste in the picture. So there we go. And hit enter. Again, I'll let it run its course and then I'll come back. Well, it's done. AI continues to be terrible. This is the new look, which is just a horror show, right? It's just terrible. The fact that we now have this stuff going on, insane, right? Like, this is my worst nightmare when it comes to CSS. It's just not it. This is not the win, but it did do something, right? It took an image, which is a little more work. Notice our context window is now at 50% utilization. It made a whole bunch of changes. I mean, you see these changes. It's just insane is quite the word to use. Minus 385 add 0. After adding 505, 107, 16, and removing just over 100. This is, I can't see how that you look at that image and look at this and go, yep, you nailed it, right on track. This is just not it. But we're going to accept it anyways because we're YOLOing it, and it's more about the work being done rather than about the, being right. So back here, we'll hit refresh again. And now we're at 239 is what we've used. I don't know if that's updated. Because it seems like it hasn't really checked in yet. But I'm going to pause it right here. I'm going to come back after I go to bed and come back because I think that I want to make sure this is really the right number. But I think we've done more than that, but it may not have been tracking everything. So with that being said, we're going to come back and do some more work. When I come back we'll put some dark mode in, try some other things, have it do a few more things, just see if we can get it to do something right. And then what we'll do is we'll switch models. This is the medium model. This is, and more expensive models do cost more, but do often give us better results, not good results, but better results. So we can, have it, and then we'll come back and do some code review on an existing application. We're learning a lot more about what's currently there and read a lot more into context, etc. So we'll do that, but again, I'm going to let it sit for a little bit to make sure that we have updated our numbers of the latest costs associated with this. Every cost you do with AI is going to be a trailing cost, meaning you're going to see the cost after you do it, which is not a great way of buying things, but at the same time, it's really hard not to, since every call you make, every model call you make is going to be a little bit different. But with that being said, I'm going to pause the video right here. I'll come back and we'll make sure that that cost is correct, and we'll keep going with a few more edits and then get into some brownfield work. Okay, so I've waited just about 12 hours. And if we refresh this, it still looks like the spending about the same, $3.35, which is good. I mean, it's good that it's updating quickly. I think we've learned a couple things so far, and we're not quite done here yet before we move on to another example. But I think what we've learned is that if you use a cheap model, like Sonnet 4.6 is cheaper, it's a medium model, you can get some work out of it, but it is getting expensive because $3 for essentially less than half an hour's worth of work, really, with no no skills, no extra MD files, no deep work, just really simple, easy work. $3.35 is quite a bit of money because that, like I said, probably in a day I'm spending, even if I'm not doing multiple things in parallel, which I would be doing, but even if I was doing things in line, I'd be spending between $50 and $100 on a cheap model. So that works out to be what? There's, well, if we look at 50 weeks a year times 5, that's 250. So 250 times let's estimate it's $75. So we say equals 250 times 75. That looks like $18,000 on the very low end for working with an AI yourself. Okay, just at work, just during work hours. That's a lot. But let's see if we can't look and do a bit more on this. So let's do this. I'm going to bring in a different application. This is a suggestion site. It's not a big application. It's a tiny application, but it is an existing application that we have here that what it does is it runs my suggestion site. So if you're not familiar, I have a suggestion site where this is a demo version of it, where you can leave suggestions. You can see what people are looking for new content. You can upvote it. You can leave your own suggestions, etc. So we can, filter and sort and all the rest here. And if you notice here, we're loading all the suggestions from the cache quite a bit. So we got a bit of caching here, and then it goes to a MongoDB database. So what I want to do is do a bit of work on this, which is going to require it to look at an existing application and kind of build up the context. So let's start small. And I'm going to use Claude Sonnet 4.6 again. What I'll probably do is undo all these and try it again with a different model. But let's ask this right now to please review this application and see if there are any security vulnerabilities that I should be aware of and possibly fix. So this is going to go out and look at this entire application in theory. So I read the entire project and look at all the code. So it's going to do a bit more work when it comes to reading in all the context, understanding what's going on. Again, still a tiny application. We're not talking hundreds of lines of code. We're talking about a few hundred lines. We're not talking about thousands or tens of thousands like a real application. So we're going to let this run. We're going to let this run. And then when it is done, I'll come back and we'll look at what it suggests as well as what it costs for those suggestions. Okay, so since I asked it just to tell me, but I was in agent mode, it didn't just tell me, it actually did it too. And quite frankly, this is a bit ridiculous. It doesn't understand context. This is another thing that AI tools struggle with. So this right here, for example, markup string, I wanted to keep that markup string and not have it just be a string, because a markup string allows me to emphasize things, put links in, etc. But that is a danger for cross-site scripting, which is why it really freaked out right here. Cross-site scripting via markup string on owner notes. Here's the thing. Only the owner can add owner notes. The owner is me. So yes, technically I could inject my own site with bad markup, but I'm not going to do that. So so somebody got my credentials, they could do that, but if they have my credentials, they could also destroy this entire application or see all the data, etc. So this is a bad fix, but it doesn't know that because it doesn't understand context. We're not here to criticize what is done. We're going to just go ahead and say, fine, allow all of this, which actually, I believe it will also, it made some changes for allowed hosts and other things that I don't like. I think it's actually going to break how the application works. So let's just undo all of this. Yep, we're going to undo all the changes just because I don't want it to stop working. So I also don't love the fact that it uses terminal a lot. For whatever reason, Copilot loves to use a terminal when it has direct access to code. It loves to use a terminal. I don't understand the reason for that. It is what it is. So current context usage only uses 16.9%, which is not much. And if they come over here and do a refresh, right now we're at 344. So it has not moved the needle much. That is kind of encouraging. It's kind of encouraging that it can do at least that much, a few hundred lines of code without too much problems. So we're going to do one more thing for this. Please make this site also have a dark mode for display. Allow the user to decide which mode to see. Okay, love to have a dark mode in this site. Haven't done it. Hasn't been in top of my priority list. Now, quite frankly, this is not going to work. This is not enough suggestion for the AI. It's going to kind of fall down on this, but it can get it to work and do a bit more, review of the CSS, etc. And maybe it will figure out how it could make a dark mode. But I really don't think it's going to find all the right alternative colors for everything. But we'll see. So in the meantime, I'll go ahead and pause, and we'll come back once it's done. Well, it's done, and here is the. I don't know which is which, but nothing seems to happen. So that's the site. I don't see any errors here, so I'm not sure what's going on with this. But, all of this work and all of the changes, and they actually had a problem, had to rebuild and all the rest. And if we come over here and look and refresh, we're now up at 446. We burned another $1 worth of work, and what we got was a non-working system. Okay, so it thinks it's done. So what was built, user experience. There's no flash of the wrong theme. This is true. I mean, it doesn't flash. It just doesn't work. So these changes are absolute garbage. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo all of this. We're going to hit continue. Yep. And which means that we should go to Git changes and see we do have some changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to revert these changes. I don't think that let's view, compare with unmodified and just see it added a JavaScript. Aha. The fact that it doesn't undo when I say undo is really frustrating. Really don't love that. So I'm going to, let's just select all of these. Let's undo all of these. Undo, undo, and undo. Okay, I don't know why that's not undoing. It's probably because it created it. It says modified. So compare the unmodified. Interesting. So it looks like it's the same. In any event, we're going to leave it alone. We're going to not worry about it. What we're going to do is I will restart Visual Studio. I'm also going to restart another copy of Visual Studio where we will start over again from our first example. So the personal library app. What we'll do is I'll create a second one, personal library app 2. Then you can have actually, if you want a copy of this one at least, I'll leave it down in the description. But you can have a copy of what it created and see just how horrible a job that Sonnet 4.6 did. So what we're going to do next is we're going to bring in the big guns. We're going to use 5.5, so GPT 5.5, and see if it can do a better job of these tasks and what that might look like on our budget? Okay, so here's the Personal Library app 2, which has the Personal Library app or Personal Library Blazor web set, or I'm sorry, Blazor web app. There we go. No extras in there, is just like before. The one thing I didn't mention, I don't think the first time, is I did update the NuGet packages as well. So it's got Aspire 13.4 and the latest NuGet packages. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this same script, hit copy, come over to GitHub. We're going to change from Sonnet. We're going to come down to the big one. This is one of the high cost ones, but it's supposedly so much better. So we're going to give it the same prompt as before and let it run on this same application and see what it comes up with, as well as what those costs might look like. So let's let this run, and we'll come back to this once it's complete. All right, so it looks like we're done now. This is the website. It does look better, or different at least, than more polished than the previous go at this. Let's add an asset. Let's add The Hobbit. It's a book, which we have a drop down for just book. Okay, cool. And storage location, Tim's office. This is a great book. Cool. And we're at say add. So now we have this item. Let's add another one. Let's go back to assets and add one more just to see if we didn't do this last time, but Top Gun. And this should be movie. Let's just see how it reacts. And storage location, closet, shelf. And the first one, I don't know. That's fine. Okay, so we go to assets. We can see two assets there. It's a different in the grid. We can filter by type, which is nice. So let's add a borrower real quick. We'll say Tim, Corey, 505 555 1212, and we'll say test at test.com. Okay, no spacing here. I mean, this is not a good layout, but at least it's looking better, I guess. So we check out Tim, Corey, date, save, checkout. So now we have it borrowed. If we go to details here, we can see the borrowing history. I do like this layout better, but it's still not great. It is better. Let's just do a quick F12 on this to see if we can, we have a much better layout now for mobile. Like this is actually a mobile friendly-ish layout. So we have a scroll bar here, which, okay, that's not ideal. I would prefer to see something like this. But again, with a borrowing history and a list, that may not be as easy to do. This takes designers. This takes actual designers thinking this thing through instead of just, winging it and calling it good. But I think this is better. So let's answer the important question now. How much did this cost? So let's close this down. And remember, it cost like $1.10, I believe it was, for 4.6. If we hit refresh, I did refresh this earlier to make sure, $1.39. So it wasn't a lot more money for what it did. It did a few more things. It cost a little bit more, but it wasn't a crazy amount different, and it did have somewhat better output. Now, I'm not going to keep going through and modifying this, but let's jump over to the suggestion app and go back to Copilot, let it load, and we're on 5.5 again. So let's create, let's delete this thread. Let's just clear the whole thing and start over. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, I want you to review this site for any security issues, errors, or areas of improvement. Okay, so real simple. We'll let 5.5 run that. I'll come back to it once it's done, and we'll see if this changes that pricing at all, or if we're still in the close to the same as what we did with 4.6 Sonnet. So I'll come back to it once it's done. Okay, we're done. I don't really love how this did this because it made changes. It didn't really tell me what I was doing that clearly. So, remaining recommendations, which aren't really a great list, and then reduce sensitive logging, improve cache invalidation for suggestions, made blob storage setup conditional, replaced async void event handlers with async task. Actually, no, that's not how you do that. You want async void if it's an event handler. That's the whole thing. So yeah, remove the raw markup, which we saw earlier, which is the same thing it did before, but it's not really clear what it's doing. It's kind of just hid in the midst of all of this stuff. So I don't love that. I don't love the fact that it had an approach and open questions, but it didn't really say, hey, here's what to do next. But the big key here is, what did it cost? Wow, there we go. Stop going around. The cost here, if we look, is now at $2.23. So we spent another roughly $1, a little less than, to do that check. We've now we've used 669 credits out of my 14,000 available. So yeah, we're not going crazy with costs. At the same time, our costs will be significant over the year. So I could see using this and running out of credits. If I'm at the $39 a month credit limit, personally I'm at 100, but let's say even at 100, I can see using this in a day or two, and then being out of credits for the month. And that is something we're seeing across the web. I don't think it's like, and here's where it comes in. I don't think that every call is a crazy call. But it's interesting how you can't really predict what a call will be, because this call right here that I just did with a suggestion site, that was, I believe, over $1 for Sonnet 4.6, and yet it was under $1 for GPT 5.5, even though 5.5 is a more expensive model. So it all depends on how the model handles it, because I also think that I like the Sonnet 4.6 response better, even though they both made bad choices. So I at least laid out the bad choices better for me to understand what was going on. So I think that as you bring in, agents, as you bring in skills, as you bring in, markdown files to add the context. I mean, we're not using hardly any context here. Even with this, let's move this off the screen. Even with this, we're only at 19% context utilization. We're not using much at all. So this is definitely still in the demo territory. So yeah, I can see how you can burn through your credits really, really fast, but it's also an unknown how your credit's going to be used, because it feels like the same exact scenario, like I said, uses more for the cheaper model when it uses less for the more expensive model sometimes. But if we did this exact same thing over again, we might get different results, especially if you tweak that statement even a little bit at the beginning. So it really does depend. I think that what it comes down to, though, is yes, this is a very expensive way to use AI. I think that this is probably untenable for most organizations just because of how expensive it is for even very simple things. In probably an hour total of testing with two different models, I have used about $7. $6.70, something like that. So that's a lot of money for a little test, for a little demo in our. If I was heads down working on something, not trying to talk you through it and review it with you, I think that this would be a much more expensive day. I think I could easily go over $100 in a day, which that's where my monthly budget is. Therefore, I would stop there. And if you want to go higher than a monthly budget than $100 per person, which obviously you're going to have to, $100 a day is really expensive. That's $25,000 a year. or more. So yeah, we're going to get into really expensive territory before you even get into agents and sub agents and all the rest. So I guess what it comes down to is you review it for yourself. You think, look at this and say, hey, that seems like it's worth it. Or, hey, I don't think that's worth it. But I wanted you to see what it actually was going to cost, what it actually did. Even though, again, your costs will vary, I think seeing, what it did and then what it cost can at least give you less of a, the social media, this is horrible, this is great, give you more of a concrete look at what's happening, and you can make your own decision about what's worth it and what's not. All right. So let me do down the comments what you're seeing from your usage if you're using GitHub Copilot, and then what your thoughts are on these expenses and if it's worth it or not, and where you see us going in the future. I still don't think we're paying the full cost for our credits yet. I still don't think we're at the point where our tokens are actually making money for GitHub Copilot. I think we're still in the subsidy level. I think we're subsidizing less, but the overall costs just don't line up compared to the income for these companies. We'll see after a few months of this pricing if maybe that is enough to meet them where they're at, but they're still taking on an enormous amount of debt, and not just for capital expense, but also for operational expenses. So again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.